Okay, so I'm going to be showing you how I took a 99-cent store cow skull and kind of upgraded it and made it into a shoulder pauldron for one of my costumes. To start off, I'm removing the horns. It's not necessary if you want to keep the current horns, but I felt like switching them out for some ram horns. So I went in and just took out all those screws that held them together, held the skull together, and then the skull horns popped out super easily, as you can see here. Then I went ahead and just reattached all those screws, keeping the extra ones from the wall hangers so I could use them later on. I then went ahead and sanded it down really well. I recommend getting in all the little cracks and everything because I did not, and I regretted it because I used gesso to prime it, as you can see here. I recommend it because it has a really nice dry, bony texture that you're not really going to get with any other primers. However, mine did not stick very well, and I think it had to do with the fact that I did not sand as well as I should have. So, make sure to do that. I did, I think, 3 to 4 layers, so I recommend doing that, and then you can actually use a blow dryer or a heat gun to dry them in between. If you're unsure, it's better to go with more layers than less. You can really never go too wrong with gesso. That's how it looks. So if you wanted to leave it how it is, I recommend just maybe sealing it with some primer then, or like adding some texture with paint. But since I'm adding the horns, I'm going to want to go ahead and glue those on before I do any of the paint. I first went in with a Dremel and kind of shaped them so that they fit the skull a little bit better. I didn't want it to stick out too much, so I kind of like made it like flat and like so it doesn't stick out, if that makes any sense. Then I hot glue them onto skull, and this is where I kind of ran into problems with the sanding. I didn't quite get it sanded enough, so the paint kept lifting up along with the glue, and I struggled for a very long time. Fortunately, the horns are mainly made out of they're made out of EVA foam, and the detail is hot glue, so it kind of worked because I just sealed it with so much hot glue. You're gonna use so much hot glue if you do it this way. 0 out of 10, do not recommend. But you know, it worked in the end. I didn't hate the results. See, didn't even stick. We don't talk about how much I struggled with this part. Okay, let's skip to when I actually got them attached. Then I went ahead and kind of lined it so it looked the same as the pattern on the horn, as you can see here. Then I actually taped off the horns since those are already painted. I reused them from a different costume, so that's why they're already painted, but you'd want to paint it all together if they are not painted yet. And I'm actually going for a black skull look. So if you were wanting to keep it white, I recommend just using acrylic paints to detail it, but I'm going to go ahead and go in with some Rust-Oleum spray paint in that metallic color, and give it a good 2 to 3 coats so it's fully covered on all sides. Make sure to let it dry in between layers, of course. And that's how it looks after the paint. I'm really happy with the color. Then I used this kind of gold accent color and a little brush and also a sponge to detail it fully. If you rip up the sponge, it'll give you actually more of an organic like shape when you're brushing it on, so there's no harsh lines or anything. I highly recommend doing that instead of just using, like, cutting it with scissors or a knife or anything like that. So I'm really just going in around the raised areas and avoiding all the lower spots to kind of give it like a highlighted effect. And I'm also blending the base of the horns into the actual horns themselves. I actually use the same technique to paint the horns when I used it for that other costume. If you really wanted to make a pop, you could definitely go in with some shadows, but I was in a little bit of a rush, so I just clear coated it, called it a day. For the straps to make it into the shoulder pad, I recommend just making some out of leather. I happen to have these from another costume actually, so I'm repurposing a lot here. And I just used some like clips on it, measured it to the correct like length to go from my shoulder underneath the other shoulder and back around. To attach them, I actually used the screws for that wall hanger thing that was attached to the back when I bought it. And I screwed it in place. And then I actually made sure to add some glue on top so that it wasn't just the screws holding in place. For that, I used super glue. And then I did the same for the bottom, but I kind of struggled, so please bear with me. I literally struggle so much in this. There we go. I finally got it. And then I went in here and showing you how I do with the super glue. I put it underneath, and then I actually take a little piece of leather and super glue that to the top as well, just to cover up the screw and kind of give it a little extra reinforcement. So I did that both to the top and the bottom. I also went in with some hot glue just to kind of reinforce the edges, because like I mentioned, my paint was pulling up so much at this point. I was getting so frustrated. You'll see it in the next clip. You can see where it was pulling up and where I lost some of the paint. Fortunately, this is on the bottom, so you don't really see it. But please, sand it. Don't do what I did. It was very annoying. And then for like the attachments, I actually just used some magnetic snaps, as you can not see since I am not actually on screen for most of this. God, I am great at YouTube. But they're just little magnetic snaps. You can use regular snaps, clips, anything, literally just whatever you have on hand. I recommend just doing that. Next up, I got this piece of fur that kind of fits pretty well, and I'm actually going to make 2 slits at basically the beginning of one side of the horns all the way to the other side of the horns, as you can see here. And then I'm going to, in between those 2 points, trim off just about an inch of fur, or trim off about an inch from the top to an inch down, just so I can glue it on a little easier. And then what I actually did is I went ahead and I glued on just in between those 2 cuts that I made. Gotta love the camera angle. I'm so good at getting these really awkward ones. Oh God. I then trimmed it up a little bit before moving on to the outside half. Gotta make sure it's really glued on there well. Okay, and then for the outside half, I actually went ahead and just put it on the other side, as you can see, of the strap. And then I actually sewed it along the top with just a whip stitch, just because I felt like that would hold a lot better than glue, since that part is going to get a little bit more movement, and I didn't want it coming undone. If you want to do this part with a sewing machine, you can. I just found it easier to hand stitch it because I didn't see those horns being of help when you're using a sewing machine. It would probably just get in the way. And here is the finished product. I really like how it looks. Obviously this isn't the actual costume, but I'm really happy with it. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. But yeah, this is the look. I'm very happy with my $4.90.